afternoon, children. Welcome to online class session 35. Previous session we discussed about World War II and its causes. Today we are going to learn about course of the World War II. The World War II fought in two distinct fronts. One is European region, other one is the Asia Pacific region. In part 1 we are learn about World War II in European region. In Europe, the war was fought by the Allies against Germany and Italy. In the Asia Pacific, Allies fought with Japan. The two theatres of war will be discussed separately. The war in Europe also extended to North Africa, which had been occupied by Germany. World War II was a modern war fought with heavy military equipments such as tanks, submarines, battleships, aircraft carriers, fighter planes and bomber planes. This involved very large resource base since all this equipment needed to be manufactured. There had to be a raw materials, manufacturing capacity and technical input to improve the military hardware. This was an expensive and prolonged war of attrition. Next, the outbreak of war. Britain and France declared war on Germany in September 1939. In June 1940, Italy joined Germany, and September 1940, Japan also joined the Axis powers. There was little action immediately after the declaration of war. Britain had already begun to build up military capabilities, and all young men were conscripted for military duty. The first years of war were a time of spectacular success of Germany army, which occupied Denmark and Norway and later France. By 1941, all of the mainland Europe till the Russian frontier was under the Axis powers. Germany followed the tactic of lightning strike, that is Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg means lightning war. The British Royal Navy continued to be most powerful among the European naval forces and ensured that a seaborne invasion of Britain was not possible. Britain depended on large-scale imports of food, raw material and industrial goods by sea from its empire and the US. To attack this, Germany developed a fleet of submarines which caused havoc especially in the Atlantic Ocean area by sinking the large number of civilian ships carrying supplies to Britain. Next important event is the Dunkirk invasion or Dunkirk battle. In May 1940, more than 3 lakh British and French soldiers were forced back to the beaches in Dunkirk. They were under heavy fire. There was no all-out attack by the Germans, and 3,38,000 men were rescued by British by calling on all men who had boats or small ships, which could be put to the use. The French soldiers formed a nucleus of Free French Army under General de Gaulle. Britain would have found it is difficult to regroup if so many of her soldiers had been lost at Dunkirk. Next, the Battle of Britain. July 1940, it was feared that Germans were planning to invade Britain. Hitler wanted to force Britain to accept his proposal for peace by a prolonged airborne bombing campaign. The German Air Force began to attack specific targets, especially the port, airfield, and industrial installations. In September 1940, London was bombed mercilessly, an action known as Blitz. By October 1940, night bombing raids on London and the industrial cities began. This campaign failed because with the aid of newly developed top secret device radar for detecting aircraft while still at a distance, the fighter planes of Royal Air Force were able to inflict severe losses on German bombers. The raid stopped after October 1940. Saluting the bravery of Royal Air Force, Churchill said in his speech, the Germans dropped their plans to invade Britain because of the failure of the air battle. Next, the Lend-Lease in 1941 to 1945. President Roosevelt realized that United States had to change its policy of isolation but could not intervene directly in the war in Europe because it was not politically feasible. So he started a program of Lend-Lease in March 1941. Arms, food, military equipment and other supplies were sent to Britain disguised as a loan, which would be returned after the use. Next one, the invasion of Russia. In June 1941, German army invaded Russia. The long-term objective of this move were to seize prime land for settling Germans, to destroy the communist regime and also exploit Russia's natural resources, especially oil. The German strategy of lightning strike was initially successful and the army penetrated 1,000 miles into Russian territory very soon. The German army then marched on Moscow, but ultimately the resistance by the Soviet army and the severe Russian winter defeated the German army. So this was very difficult for Germany. Next, the Battle of Stalingrad. In August 1942, the Germans attacked Stalingrad. Stretching about 30 miles along the banks of Volga River, Stalingrad was a large industrial city producing ornaments and tractors. Capturing the city would cut Soviet transport links with southern Russia and Stalingrad. In addition, seizing the city that bore the name of Soviet leader Stalin would serve as a great personal and propaganda victory for Hitler. German war planners hoped to achieve that end with Fall Blue. So Operation Blue, Fall Blue means Operation Blue. The operations began with significant German victories. Russian people suffered not only from bad working and living conditions, but also from ill treatment at German hands in the occupied areas. There are about 15 million civilian deaths during the war and about 10 million members of armed forces were killed. Altogether, over 1/10 of Russian population died. The people remained loyal to the government. They successfully defended the city Stalingrad. It stopped the German advance into Soviet Union and marked the turning of the tide of war in favor of the Allies. So the war of Germany was begun to defeated by Russian army. Next, the Battle of Alamein in 1942. In the early years of war, German forces under General Rommel were remarkably successful in occupying North Africa. The Allied forces under General Montgomery counterattacked and defeated the German and Italian forces at El Alamein in North Africa. The German army was chased across the desert out of North Africa. This provided the base for Allied forces to invade Italy. Next, the surrender of Italy in 1943. Mussolini had been thrown out and the new government of Italy surrendered to the Allies in 1943. The Germans set up in a puppet regime in North. Mussolini was killed in April 1945 by the Italian partitions. Next, the end of Hitler or fall of Hitler. The Allied forces under the command of General Eisenhower invaded Normandy in France. The German army was forced back, but the Germans fought back and the war continued for nearly another year and finally ended in May 1945. Hitler lost his hope and committed suicide in April 1945. From 1944, the Russian army began to attack Germany from the east and captured much of Eastern Europe and Poland. In 1945, they occupied parts of Berlin so that Germany was divided into two sections after the Second World War. That's all for part 1, children. Thank you. Part 2 will be continued. In part 2,